While India's COVID emergency continues, there are stories of despair, desperation everywhere. Cases and deaths have risen exponentially in the last few days, breaking all global records. Many people are losing their lives to COVID-19, many because they don't get a fighting chance. India is facing its worst healthcare crisis. To make sense of our fight against COVID-19, Dr. Randeep Guleria, the head of AIIMS, joins us. Thanks, Dr. Guleria, for joining us on the broadcast, for sparing your valuable time. I want to begin by asking you about the story that we are tracking, which is a shortage of medical oxygen supply. There are 8 patients who've just lost their lives at the Batra hospital, one among them a doctor.
It's very, very unfortunate that this has happened, and I really, my heart really goes out to all those people who unfortunately lost their lives, not because of COVID, because of lack of oxygen. And one of the doctors who lost his life, Dr. Imtani, I know him very well since my student days, and therefore it's some sort of a personal loss to lose someone whom you've known for so long as a gastroenterologist. But I think this drives home the point that we need to be very aggressive, because healthcare workers, the health infrastructure is really stretched to the limit. And therefore, we need to have a comprehensive plan. When it's oxygen delivery, there has to be a central command center which is able to really look at how things are. There should be enough backup available so that it can be given with enough storage that the hospital has, so that even if a truck which has to reach there, if it has, for some reason, if it has a breakdown, you still have enough oxygen to be able to sort of factor in for that. Or some sort of an emergency backup should be available in the capital, where if there is such a shortage, then a backup can be sent there to really support it. So a strategy needs to be developed so that that can be done. But I also feel that, the most important thing to understand is that why is this happening? This is happening because the number of cases are continuing to increase, and that is being done at an unexpected level. And we have to work aggressively to bring down the number of cases. No health care system will be able to really match this. So therefore, the issue of having an aggressive containment, you could call it a lockdown in an area, but if you have if your case positivity is so high as it is in Delhi, very aggressive containment has to be done to decrease the number of cases. Otherwise, no hospital system will be able to manage.
Our daily cases, Dr. Guleria, are breaking global records. How did a country that seemed to have it all under control until quite recently get here? Were we caught completely off guard?
So to some extent, yes. I think we were not expecting things to happen so dramatically. 2 or 3 things happened. One is we all felt that we have a vaccine being rolled out, our cases are low. Maybe we have crossed the wave, and now COVID will not create a problem. Most people started feeling that was true, and COVID-appropriate behavior was not at all out there. Secondly, we did not really expect or did not really factor in the infectiousness of the new variants which would enter our country, and we did not really factor in how the virus could mutate and become so infectious that it would spread like wildfire in our population. And we had this feeling that there is some degree of herd immunity or immunity in the population, without realizing that if the virus changes, that herd immunity is not of much use. What happened was, when this happened, that there was no COVID-appropriate behavior, a new variant which had the propensity to spread rapidly, it led to a huge surge in cases. And what really caught us, I think, off guard was the rate of rise of cases. If you see the first wave, the cases rose in a slower manner. In the current wave, the cases have gone up almost like a rocket. They've just gone straight up. The line is almost vertical. What it means is that there was really no time to prepare, and also the turnaround time became less. Any patient who's admitted in the hospital, he's going to be on oxygen for 7 to 10 days. If your cases come at a gradual pace, the number of cases increase, let's say, at a gradual pace, as what happened during the previous during the previous surge, the hospital, the infrastructure can still manage. But if they come at such a rapid pace that every day you're multiplying more than 3 lakh cases a day, the system is not going to be able to cater for so many cases. So you will have to work on a strategy to decrease the number of cases. You can't really rely on a strategy to say that we continue to increase the health infrastructure. We have to do that, but they have to work in tandem. you can't really say that we don't do nothing as far as the number of cases is concerned, and we expect that the healthcare infrastructure will expand infinitely. That will not happen. So we have to really work on more and more health infrastructure, more hospitals, more oxygen, more beds, more human resources. But at the same time, aggressively bring down the number of cases.
Yes. And you know, Dr. Guleria, you've made the suggestion in the past as well, where you said that positivity rate of over 10% means that these areas should go into lockdown. There are 114 districts that are reporting a positivity rate of over 10%. In fact, Dr. Anthony Fauci, in an interview to the Indian Express, has said that an immediate shutdown for a few weeks is what India needs to end this cycle of transmission. Is a nationwide lockdown, therefore, what you'd recommend?
So I think at least in those districts where the positivity rate is more than 10%, we should have a very aggressive lockdown. And when I'm talking of lockdown, I mean an aggressive lockdown. We can't say that we allow activities or we have a weekend lockdown or we have only night curfew. I'm saying the type of lockdown that we had in the previous last year, we implement that at least in these districts. You're right that we may need to do it to a larger extent. But unless we do that, the number of cases will not come down and we will have unfortunate deaths, which is something that for us as healthcare workers is something very, very painful. For us to see patients outside the casualty with a saturation 70, 80, and we are not having enough oxygen points to support them is something which for any healthcare professional can be so frustrating, so depressing. It's really an issue that we need to discuss and see how we can find a solution.
Well, indeed, and no easy answers there, Dr. Guleria, and one can't even imagine actually what doctors like yourselves face on a daily basis. It's so hard to report on it. We don't know, can't even imagine what you go through facing it. But, you know, talking about India's numbers at the moment, many experts say that the peak will come in the next 1 week. Do you agree with that?
So I personally feel the peak is going to vary from region to region. We are seeing that the number of cases are now stabilized and coming down as far as the western part of India is concerned, Maharashtra is concerned, seven southern states are concerned. We're still waiting for the peak to happen in central India as far as Delhi or Punjab or UP is concerned. But I also worry that we may see a surge in cases as far as eastern part of India is concerned. So different areas will peak at a different point in time. Yes, I hope that in Delhi we may have, or in central part of India, we may have the peak happening in the first half of next month, that is the first 2 weeks of next month, or this month actually, and that I hope is something that will bring down the cases. But we may still continue to have a surge in other parts of the country.
Right. You know, you've said this many times that there are two ways to deal with the current surge in cases. One is that we have micro-containment lockdown in areas, and the other is to vaccinate as many people as we can. But currently, as we open up vaccine to the 18+ category, there is an acute shortage of vaccine that is being reported from several parts. How can we deal with it?
So I agree with that, and that is what I've even said in the past, that we need to do our math. If we have enough doses, yes, we should open it up for everyone. But if we don't have enough doses, we need to prioritize, and we need to really look at how vaccine can be helpful in terms of decreasing mortality and then breaking the chain of transmission. So it would be more useful if we did it in a graded manner. If you open it up for everyone above the age of 18, we have to make sure that we have enough doses, whether we are able to get from outside or whether the suppliers can ramp up their production. But that will take some time. And therefore, till we have a situation where we feel we can do it, it may still be worthwhile to look at a graded approach as far as the available doses are concerned. Sometimes it creates a confusion because we are not sure how much the manufacturers can supply. So I think it's important to have a proper sort of database as to how many doses can we get every week, every fortnight, every month from the suppliers, from outside, and then do your math and see that if we have so many doses, we can cover so many individuals, and based on that, really open it up. Otherwise, it will really create a problem where there will be a huge issue of supply versus demand.
So do you then feel that we've perhaps opened up this 18+ vaccination prematurely because it's open as of today?
So at that point in time, I think the thought process was that we would be able to get a lot of doses from outside,
right,
and the manufacturers will be able to ramp up production. Sputnik would also come into a big way. But I think what we're seeing right now is that probably is not happening as one had anticipated. And maybe there is a need to relook at the strategy and see whether we can look at a graded response.
Okay. What should people do, Dr. Guleria, those whose second shot is now getting delayed because of the vaccine shortage?
So there are a lot of people who are worried that what should we do? Will that the efficacy of the vaccine become less, or will it be of no use? I would just like to say that there is enough data which says that if your second shot gets delayed by a few days or a few weeks, it still retains the efficacy. You still will have a booster phenomena with the second shot, and it will still be effective. So don't despair and don't feel that your vaccine has been of waste. Just wait till you can get your second shot and take it as soon as possible.
Very important advice. At the moment, given the surge in cases that we are seeing, how many different variant strains does India have? Do we have an idea of what we're dealing with?
So, as we've said before, you will have a number of variants which will emerge because of mutation which continues to happen in this virus. But we are looking at what we call variants of concern. You will have some variants which we call variants of interest. They are of interest to scientists because of the fact that they are, you know, how the virus is mutating, how it's changing, but it's really not having clinical significance. What we are concerned about is those variants which are more infectious, as we are saying that we are seeing that there are variants which are spreading the disease more rapidly, variants which are more virulent. Are they causing more death? Are our death rates going up? Or variants which have developed the immune escape mechanism. Are they causing more reinfection? Those who already had COVID-19 are getting infection again because of this variant, or it is not. It is decreasing the efficacy of the vaccine. Currently, the data that is coming out, and there is now a large body of data which is being accumulated by gene sequencing, does seem to suggest that the variants that we are seeing are more infectious, but there's not enough data to suggest that they are causing more deaths or they are associated with more vaccine escape phenomena. The vaccine efficacy is going to come down. There is some data which was there from the UK variant from UK,
right,
which subsequently suggested that that variant may also be associated with a little higher mortality, which they had initially not found but had reported later on.
Right.
So that is a little bit of a cause of concern because in certain parts of central India, we are seeing the UK variant becoming more and more dominant.
Dr. Guleria, what's the ideal time to test after possible exposure to a COVID positive patient, given the fact that we're now dealing with, like you said, mutant strains of the virus? So what's the ideal time to get a test done?
So if you have come in close contact with a COVID positive patient, you need not get your test done immediately because there is what we call an incubation period, a time for the virus to multiply in your nose and throat, and then only will the test pick it up. It's usually between 5 to 7 days. So we would advise people to wait for till 5 to 7 days and then only get the test done. In some individuals who develop symptoms before that, so if, say on the third or fourth day, you got fever, you got cold or cough, then obviously you should get tested on that day. But if you are asymptomatic or you have no symptoms, then at least wait for 5 to 7 days and then only get your test done. Otherwise, you may get a false sense that you don't have COVID, but you may be in the incubation period and you may actually be infectious, and that may cause a problem.
Right. Dr. Guleria, there have been worrying reports from across the country which suggest that India's COVID deaths could actually be much higher than what the official figures are. Many people who are losing their life to the virus at home, for instance, not being documented. How does this affect our strategy in terms of fighting COVID?
So I think we need to really look at it holistically. There is a possibility, but my own feeling is that if we look at all deaths which are happening, because all deaths which will happen will either have a burial or have a cremation, and that record is always available. That can be looked at critically, and one can see what is the database in terms of deaths which are occurring. Is there a spike, which is because of deaths which are occurring at home, and then could they be because of COVID? One could do what we call a virtual autopsy. But having said that, yes, it's important for us to get this database because that will also give us an idea as to how the virus is behaving. And like I said, has it really become a more virulent strain in terms of causing higher mortality? So it's very important to be able to collect this data to see is there certain changes in the virus which are affecting mortality and also the severity of illness.
Speaking of variants, younger people, pregnant women, are they more prone to COVID-19 because of the variant strains that we're seeing in India right now?
So both pregnant women and younger children are prone to COVID-19. They are also at a high risk. It's not that they are more prone as compared to other individuals. They are at an equal risk, but Initially, we felt children were protected, but now there is enough data to suggest that they are equally prone and can get the infection. They may get a milder infection.
Right.
It's also being seen in pregnant women, and that is why there is a lot of discussion going on regarding vaccinating pregnant women, because if they are at a higher risk of getting more severe disease, which could affect not only them, but the fetus or the newborn, then it is also worthwhile to consider vaccinating the pregnant women. And we need to look at a strategy there where the risk-benefit analysis needs to be done. Because currently we don't have enough data from studies to say that this vaccine is safe, but I think it's something that we need to consider, like we did for H1N1 swine flu, where it was then recommended that pregnant women should be vaccinated.
Okay. Speaking of the new strain, more people getting lung infections, more people needing oxygen, is that again linked to the new strain?
So this is something that needs to be looked at. I think we are seeing more people who are getting lung infection, more people who are really having an increased oxygen demand. I've just come from Jhajjar, our hospital there. I've gone in and visited the patients there. We have almost 600 patients admitted there. Most of them are requiring oxygen. So definitely that is there. But the issue is this number looking large because of the number of cases that we have? Could it be the same in terms of percentage? For example, if we had less than a lakh patients per day, then if we said only 10% or 15% need admission, that number is small. But if we suddenly said that we have 3 lakh or 3.5 lakh number of patients, then that 10 or 15% actually becomes much more in terms of absolute numbers.
Right.
So we're seeing a large number of cases, but I'm not sure whether it is different percentage-wise. Possibly not.
Right. Dr. Guleria, speaking once again of diagnosis of the new variant, how can this new variant be diagnosed by a blood test or a chest X-ray? What are the markers?
So 2 or 3 things I'd like to say here. One, of course, the new variant is still, we can be picked up by your routine RT-PCR test. There's enough data from ICMR which suggests that the new variant has not really developed a mechanism that it's not picked up by the test, which we are currently doing and which are currently approved by the ICMR. So that can be picked up. But how do you decide that the infection that you had is from the new variant or it's from the older variant or the older strain? That can only be done by genome sequencing, and that is something that's why it takes a longer time to be able to really pick that up. But from the treatment point of view, it really has no change. And your blood tests and X-rays are also pretty similar. But here I'd like to really say that there has been a lot of panic because of the fact that everyone feels that if he has COVID-19, he or she should get a blood test done and get a CT scan done. That probably is not required because if we look at the natural course of the disease, you will have some inflammatory markers which will go up, which will happen in any infection. Even if you had a common cold, your blood tests will go up, your markers will go up, and they will come down. So don't get panicky just because your CRP or some blood report is high. I would really say you don't really need to get the blood test done. If you're feeling all right, your saturation is okay, your fever is coming down, don't rush to get your blood test done or a CT scan done. It will create more confusion.
All right. Dr. Guleria, that's very important advice for patients at this time. Thank you so much once again for sparing your valuable time and joining us on NDTV. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.